Hey guys, so today I'll be giving you an overview of what a curve is and how the ACT is scored based on a curve. I'll also delve into some frequently asked questions about curves, and hopefully with this background knowledge, you'll be able to explore some of the advanced tools and topics available on the College Panda, and you'll have a better understanding of the ACT in general. So first, what is a curve? Well, you probably have some idea from school. Let's say everyone in your math class takes a final and the scores come out like this. So we have a 48, a 52, 65, and the top score is a 75. Normally a C, but your teacher, provided he's not a jerk, which a lot of math teachers can be, will probably scale that 75 up to an A. I know some listener out there is like, no, my teacher doesn't do that. Well, I don't know. Buy him some cookies and maybe he will. By the way, I don't know why you would ever make an exam where the top score is a C. I don't get that. Either you're a bad teacher or you're a bad test maker. Anyway, the same sort of idea gets applied to the ACT, and that's because changes in difficulty across each exam need to be accounted for. The makers of the ACT, they try to make the exam equally difficult each time, but it's hard to quantify how hard an exam is. So think about it. You might be able to tell that this question is harder than that question, but it's hard to say by how much. So because the exams can't be made perfectly equal in difficulty, a curve is used to make things fair. So if you get a slightly more difficult exam, as we see here on the left, the curve won't punish your score as much for every mistake. So the top score is a 36, the curve is going to be a bit more lenient and your score won't drop that much. Compared to an easier test where your score will drop a bit more for each mistake that you make. And that way, scores from different test dates can be compared with each other. It would be unfair if you got stuck with a harder exam and had your score compared against students who got lucky with an easier exam without this concept of a curve. So to address a common misconception, yes, the curve does change from test to test. A lot of people think that the curve stays the same. It doesn't. So what do these curves look like? Well, before we get into that, let me explain what a raw score is. A raw score is just a fancy term for the number of questions you got correct. So if you get a raw score of 70 on the English section, that means you got 70 questions correct. The maximum raw score on the English is 75 because there are 75 questions. The maximum on the math is 60, on the reading it's 40, and on the science it's also 40. If you get all of the questions correct, you always get a perfect scaled score of 36. So let's take a look at some actual past curves so you can see how we get from a raw score to a scaled score. So the curve on the left here is from the June 2014 exam. The curve on the right is from the January 2002 exam. And you can find these curves at the end of any officially released ACT test. If you don't know where to find these tests, subscribe to the College Panda newsletter and you'll get links to all the publicly released tests sent directly to you. So what are we looking at? Well, here we see the raw scores along the columns, and on the left we have the scale score. And if we get all 75 questions correct, that gets us a perfect 36. But if we miss one, we drop down to a 74, and that translates to a 35. Drop another one, we have a 73, but we're still in this range, so that still gets us a 35. Same thing with a 72. When we get down to a 71, then we get a 34. So this curve looks pretty forgiving. It's pretty lenient. And that tells me that the test was probably harder, especially when you compare it to the January English test, where if you keep getting questions wrong, it's just continually dropping your scaled score from 36 to 35 to a 34. And so you would repeat this process for each of the sections. And so just doing one more, if we look at the science, it looks pretty tough. So if we miss one, we're down to a 39. We skip over a scaled score of 35 and we're already down to a 34. We drop another one and getting a 38, that already brings us to a 32. So this science curve is really tough. It's really harsh. And in fact, the science curves are notorious for being really tough on the ACT. And I would say in general, the ACT curves are tougher than the SAT curves. Yep, so that is how you get your scaled scores. So let's talk about the composite score. And the composite score is the overall score you send to colleges. So let's say that we get a 34 in English, a 32 in math, a 36 in reading, and a 34 in science. The way we get the composite score is just to average your scores from all 4 sections. So in this case, we arrive at a 34. And again, this is what you report to colleges and the score that you probably brag to your friends about. And I would say a 34 is pretty good. So generally a 31 is what I would call the minimum Ivy League score. So if you get above a 31, you did pretty well. And that is how you grade your ACT. So let's get into some frequently asked questions. So the first is, does the ACT round up or down? And the short answer is yes. So going back, if we happen to get a 33.5 or a 33.75 instead, both of those would round up to a 34. So anything 0.5 and above, you round up. Anything lower, you round down. So if we got a 33.25, you would round down to a 33. So getting back, the second question is there a best time to take the ACT? And so this comes from, a lot of students think that if they take it during a month when not a lot of smart students take it, they'll be able to take advantage of a better curve. And there's a couple problems with that line of thinking. First, hundreds of thousands of students take the ACT. So unless someone directs all the bad students to take it at the same time, you're never going to get a bunch of bad students making the curve better during any given month. And second, the curve is not solely based on how people did during the month that you took it. So let me repeat that. The curve is not solely based on how other people did during the month that you took the ACT. So the people at the ACT, they're smart. They hire a bunch of PhDs in statistics, and they've developed their own curving algorithms to compare your test with all previous tests. So I'm not going to get into the exact curving process because it's quite complicated, but essentially you're being compared to everyone who took the exam in the past, not just the people who took it in the same month as you. So it's not the simple curving process your math teacher might use in class, where the top score gets scaled to an A. Sometimes the top score on the ACT, if no one gets all the questions correct, doesn't get scaled to a 36. And that's evidence that the curving process is more complicated. And so they do that to try to be as fair as possible. So in short, there is no best time to take the ACT in terms of a curve. Take it when you're ready. Third question, how is the essay factored into your score? So if you're watching this, the essay is now a separate score that's graded from 1 to 36, just like the other sections, but it no longer affects your English score or your composite score. It's reported separately, whereas previously it wasn't, but now it is. Last question, if the curves change from test to test, is there any way to predict how you will score on the test? And yes, of course. So if you take a few practice exams, how you score on those is pretty reflective of how you'll score on the real exam. And if you're not happy with how you're scoring, well, you need to study up, read more College Panda. Another way you can predict your score, so let's say that you did a practice test that for some reason didn't come with a curve, or you took the exam for real and you want to speculate while you wait for your scores to come back, how you might have done. So what you can do is you can go to the College Panda ACT score calculator, And what we've done is we've taken 25 past curves from 25 released ACT exams, and we've calculated how frequently each score comes up. So let's say that we got 4 wrong on the English section, then chances are we're not going to get a 35. We're probably going to get a 34, 33, or 32. And just playing around with this a bit more, let's say that we got 5 wrong on the math. Chances are we're going to score a 33, 32, maybe a 31, but a 34 is unlikely. So that's that. I hope you guys found this informative, and thank you for watching.